Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Matt Hughes from Evelyn Partners. Matt, before we start talking, I want to talk budget or pre-budget statements or whatever we call it now in November with you in a minute, whatever we call it. People still think it's the budget, don't they really? But tell us a bit about your job, what you do at the company.
So I'm a partner at Evelyn Partners. I work primarily in tax and I advise entrepreneurs and business owners how to be compliant with UK tax law and take any planning opportunities that are available to them.
So you'll be talking to businesses in all sorts of sectors and of all sorts of different sizes then, will you?
Yep, so I am pretty much industry agnostic. I will primarily be focused on speaking to the founders, and so that could be businesses across manufacturing, technology, anything really.
And so the autumn statement is coming up on the 22nd of November, so only a few weeks away now. Is this something that's on your radar for months in advance? Do you get excited about it? Do you get worried about it? Do clients ask you about it?
So we usually do. I think this year is a little different because of all the noise and politics in the background. I think we actually expect this autumn statement to be a bit of an anticlimax, to be honest.
Don't you think quite a few of them have been in the last couple of years? Or it's all leaked in advance and we know before the actual day?
We typically get a good idea as to what's going to be spoken about before the day itself. Yeah.
Obviously, there's going to be a few headlines, isn't there, though? So what do you think are going to be the key points that people might maybe need to either look out for or prepare themselves for or talk to you about even?
Well, I suppose where the direction of travel has been recently is freezing of tax bands and allowances, which I suppose in ordinary times is not necessarily that exciting, but against the backdrop of high inflation and particularly high wage inflation, where these bands are frozen, what that's going to mean for people is lots of people are going to be moving into the high rate band, the additional rate band, for example. And actually, what's probably less well publicised are other tax impacts of that. So, for example, people lose child benefit once their adjusted net income starts to creep over £50,000. They start to lose their personal allowance after their adjusted net income creeps over £100,000. And that actually means, for example, when your income is between 100 and 125,000, your effective tax rate is 60%. No one talks about a 60% tax rate, but that exists, of course. And so we end up with these very bumpy marginal tax rates as people move up through the income levels. And I think now more than ever, with a period of high inflation, that really should be at the front of people's minds.
And yet at times of high inflation, when cost of living is rocketing as it is at the moment, a government doing nothing is never going to get headlines, but actually from a tax revenue point of view, it's massively beneficial to them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been various studies that have sort of shown the impact of what this stealth tax could have over time, and you know the additional tax take is billions and billions.
What are businesses telling you in terms of how much this is impacting on their ability to do what they want to do at the moment?
So I think it just adds to cost pressures generally for employees because they end up with less cash in their pocket. You know, if their tax is going up, their child benefit is going down, their personal allowance is going down, their tax-free childcare they're losing access to, I think it just adds to that general aura that things are quite difficult at the minute for, you know, ordinary people.
And if people, and when you're talking to them about sort of things that they can do, are options becoming more limited at the moment in terms of what they can do in the short term to help out when you've got such a high inflation and an economy?
So a little bit. I think it really depends on people's spending power. So probably the best thing that people can do to avoid these stealth taxes and I suppose other losses of income through child benefit loss, personal allowance loss, is think about things like pension contributions. So the way these taxes are calculated are with reference to what's called adjusted net income. And that is, in very simple terms, your salary less pension contributions, gift aid, those sorts of things. So actually, if people are in a position where they do have a little bit of spare cash, making pension contributions could not only be tax efficient in terms of the actual contribution, but if it brings their adjusted net income down below one of those thresholds at 50,000, 100,000, it could save them other things as well in terms of child benefit and tax-free childcare.
Is there a bit of a payoff though at the moment in terms of, given the uncertainty that we've got, people don't want to tie up cash too much, they want to keep some cash free for a rainy day just in case as well?
Of course, and there is no silver bullet, but it's typical housekeeping things that people can be thinking of. If a pension isn't appropriate, can they be thinking about using their ISA allowance, for example, so they still retain access to that cash?
Do people know all this, do you find?
No, absolutely not.
Which bits are the least known that you really think ought to be have a profile?
Well, I'd love there to be greater profile on the rates of tax as people's income increases, because I think that will influence their decisions on, do I do overtime? Do I take this additional job, for example? And I don't think people have that certainty. And there's a very interesting article released recently, I think by Tax Policy Associates, which showed a graph of how actually your marginal tax rate changed as your income increased. And there were some very spurious results where I think if someone had 6 children, their tax rate could be over 100% at certain levels of income, which is obviously ludicrous. But I think it's a result of tax policy being tied together piece by piece over a number of years, rather than someone sitting down and saying, well, let's have an overarching strategy here, and let's try and make a system that is equitable and fair and simple. And we seem to be moving further and further away from that over time.
Because there's been a big campaign, hasn't there, in the last few months to try and get more mature workers who, for whatever reason, have left the workforce, or they've taken early retirement, or they want to go part-time, to come back and fill some of the vacancies. But from what I'm hearing, some people are saying, well, it's not financially beneficial for me to do so. So that's one of the loopholes, isn't it?
So I agree. The government are obviously incentivised in getting people back to work at that age range, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was something in the autumn statement that was some sort of small tax break for those people, or some change to how pensions might be taxed, for example, if they're at that age. So I think that's something we should look out for.
We've had now, haven't we, pretty much all the main political parties delivering their sort of setting out their mission statement in the preparation for the general. We haven't quite fired the starting pistol on the general election yet, have we? But we've seen Shadow Chancellor, we've heard what the Chancellor's had to say. Are you starting to maybe piece together a bit of a jigsaw now then of what some of the big talking points are likely to be over the next 12 months?
So I think there are probably 2 big talking points that have emerged so far. One of those is inheritance tax, and clearly there's been conversation around abolishing IHT in totality. I think what's more pertinent though for my clients is, and these rumours have persisted for a long time, is with regards to business relief. So business relief is a tax relief that enables businesses to be passed on death effectively without a charge to tax. And the reason behind that, the policy objective, is if every time the owner of a business passed away, there was a large tax charge, a lot of businesses would go under because they wouldn't be able to pay that charge, or they'd have to break up the business or sell it. So there's a clear and sensible policy objective for that relief. And it's quite worrying to me, actually, that there seems to be a lot of noise around that relief potentially falling away. I think that would be catastrophic for business, frankly. I don't think it's a loophole or a wheeze or anything like that. There is a clear reason as to why that relief exists, and I think it would be a very bad idea for that to be removed.
What would the theory be behind wanting to maybe remove that then? There's just short-term financial gain, is it?
Well, I think what's quite interesting is typically when we look at tax reliefs for private businesses, and it's quite loose, but we typically look at trading versus investment for tax. Now, trading is typically good, investment is bad. And usually to get within the relevant tax reliefs, you have to be 80% trading and 20% investment. That's your sort of cap. Whereas actually for business relief, it's a 51-49 test. So what that enables the relief to apply is to a wider range of businesses that might have more of an investment focus. I think a more sensible policy route on this would be to perhaps tighten that to the same 80-20 test that we apply for other reliefs, so that genuine trading businesses that are employing people, adding to the economy, are not adversely impacted by the owner passing away.
If I could give you the keys to number 11 Downing Street now then, and say, right, you can be the Chancellor for the day on the autumn statement, are there a couple of other things that you would put fairly near the top of your shopping list to tackle, do you think?
So I'm not sure about specific policies, but I think we are, and it goes back to the point we mentioned around the stealth taxes, I think we're moving away from a system where we have equality and equity at the heart of that. We have convenience for people in terms of paying their taxes, and we have certainty. They're the 3 things that I want to see in a future government, is making sure that taxes are proportional to wealth and income, making sure that people know what tax to pay and when to pay it, and then giving people the easy ability to pay their taxes. And I'd be focusing on the technology in the self-assessment system. Can we do more to auto-generate entries, for example, where people have salaries, the revenue already have that information, it could be auto-populated, giving people a bit more convenience with their taxes.
That's a good starting point. Convenience and simplicity. I'm all in favour of things we
and
understand.
I'm sure that's going to happen in the next 12 months.
I'll hold you to that, I think. Finally, Matt, in terms of just general confidence out there in the economy from the people that you're talking to, where do you gauge things at the moment on a sort of scale of 1 to 10?
I think people are quite resilient. I think their businesses are resilient and they're doing okay. I think the big ask that people have got, and interestingly, we did a survey of our entrepreneur clients recently, and I was quite surprised when I saw the results that there wasn't a standout policy that people were calling for. It wasn't like entrepreneurs were calling for cuts to capital gains tax or cuts to income tax. The key sort of recurring theme was we just need certainty. We need certainty of where the government wants to go and what's going to happen with taxes, because without that backdrop of certainty, they can't make the investment decisions that will ultimately be beneficial for our country.
And that's policies from the government, inflation that we know where it's going, interest rates, the whole package, isn't it, we're talking about there. Matt, great to see you, and look forward to catching up with you again. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, appreciate your time.